I'm in northern Italy checking out Galileo places and going down a few related rabbit holes. The first two pictures here are taken from the top of the Leaning Tower, which is often associated with Galileo's experiments with gravity. The complex in which we find the Leaning Tower also contains the Cathedral of Santa Maria Assunta, the Camposanto Monumentale, a monumental cemetery, which contains sculptures, memorial stones, frescoes, and a chapel and reliquary. And from the Camposanto, I do need to give a shout out to another mathematician from this city, Leonardo of Pisa, also known as Fibonacci, who is memorialized here. As well as the tower, the cathedral, and the Camposanto, we have the baptistry. While I was here, one of the docents demonstrated the acoustics of the place, so I was able not only to see what Galileo would have seen, but also to hear the reverb he would have heard in this place. But back to the Leaning Tower for now. Though Galileo himself did not write of doing his experiments on gravity here, his student Vincenzo Viviani wrote of them in a biography of his great teacher. Galileo also used inclined planes to carry out such experiments and was able to demonstrate that heavier objects did not fall faster than lighter ones, which overturned Aristotle's teaching. Unsurprisingly, there are views from the tower over the landscape, the Field of Miracles, and the town. The Leaning Tower is a campanile, meaning it's a bell tower. Looking closely at the bells, you can see symbols relating to the Medici family, as well as religious symbolism. And now we'll head into the cathedral, which is specifically connected with Galileo too. Oh, and as you leave the tower, don't miss, as I almost did, the plaque honoring Galileo just next to the exit. The doors to the cathedral display ornately crafted panels. In the cathedral is a chandelier or lantern, now called Galileo's lantern, that, according to his student, is what inspired Galileo to carry out experiments with pendulums. Because the lantern was my focus, I hadn't really thought about what the rest of the cathedral would look like, and wasn't prepared for the riot of ornamentation and color that I met, from the sculpted doors to the coffered ceiling, to the ornate pulpit and paintings and mosaics. The lantern, too, was different from what I'd imagined. Elaborate, darkly colored, and with multiple rows of lighting. Though the Field of Miracles was crowded despite my visit being off-season, the nearby Piazza dei Cavalieri was nearly deserted, with its Church of St. Stephen and its clock tower. The winding pathways I followed eventually opened out onto the Arno River. Pisa was one of the Italian maritime republics, like Genoa and Venice. The Arno River here is very near its mouth, which opens into the Ligurian Sea. Continuing across the Arno, I came into a lively district with many shops, restaurants, and other attractions. And I do want to focus some attention on a modern item, the mural Tutto Mundo by Keith Haring. With its diversity of figures and its theme of peace and harmony in the world, it captured my attention for a very long time. And the longer I looked, the more I saw. You can find this on the back of the medieval church Sant'Antonio and directly across from a place called Artburger. It's difficult to choose a favorite image from the mural, but I think for me it's the human scissors cutting a serpent in the top right corner. I imagine this to say that when people come together and work together, they can defeat evil. But getting back to a Galileo focus, let's move on to our next city, which is Padua, or Padova. Being so near to Venice, this city is often overlooked, but it has become one of my favorites. Galileo lived in Padua from 1592 to 1610 and considered these 18 years to be the best of his life. Towers, gates, and parts of walls remain from previous centuries, and the Ponte Molino Gate, pictured here, has a plaque claiming that it was in astronomical observations that Galileo carried out from the top of this tower that he first saw 4 satellites of Jupiter. Galileo's house, just under a mile from here, is well marked and impressively large, but hard to get a picture of because of how narrow the street is. Galileo taught at the University of Padua in the building known as the Palazzo Bo. This university, founded in 1222, is more than 800 years old. And along with Galileo, many other famous names are associated with it, including such notables as Nicholas Copernicus, Francis Walsingham, William Harvey, Andreas Vesalius, and Girolamo Cardano. Galileo held the position of chair of mathematics. He taught in this classroom. In a foyer just outside the classroom is the podium he used to lecture from. And if you turn around, you can see a display that contains his 5th lumbar vertebra. This is really cool. But as much as I hope my students and the institution I work for hold me in high esteem, I really hope that displaying one of my bones outside my classroom after my death is not a way that they choose to honor me. Most of Galileo's body is buried in Florence, in the church of Santa Croce there. When he was interred, he was buried intact, but his tomb was later moved to a different location within the church, and it was at that time that a few fingers, a tooth, and this vertebra were taken for display in various other locations. Well, as long as we're on the topic of death and body parts, I'll mention that just across the quad from Galileo's classroom in Palazzo Bo is the oldest anatomical theater in the world. It was constructed in 1545. So given its date and its location, it certainly would be something he would be familiar with. Another impressive element of the university is its botanical garden, Orto Botanico, which was founded in 1595, near the beginning of Galileo's time at the university. It's the world's oldest botanical garden, still in its original location. It started with the cultivation of medicinal plants. A wall was built around it after frequent thefts, but the garden has expanded, and these days there are plants both inside and outside the original wall. The grounds also include a building that houses interactive displays, historical information, a classroom, a seed repository, a reconstruction of an apothecary shop, and multiple herbaria. There's really a lot to check out here. As time has gone on, the university has continued to grow and expand, and is now spread out across the city. Here is a map of some university buildings, and I think these are only the science-related buildings. Were Galileo teaching here today, he would not be in the Palazzo Bo, but rather in the Tullio Levi-Civita Building, which houses the math department. In the center of the building is a mosaic floor that contains the name Torre Archimede, or Archimedes Tower. On the bottom floor surrounding this area is the mathematics library and a museum of mathematical models. So, Galileo's old department continues on in fine form. If you find yourself headed to Italy, consider visiting Pisa or Padua or maybe Florence and checking out some of these mathematical connections, the old and the new, perhaps honoring Fibonacci or Tullio Levi-Civita, and checking out the many Galileo-related places and items in all their variety.